Clash of Corgis. As mentioned, this is the second edition of the game. Now the question is, what's different from the first edition? When I was originally opened it up, I had a look around the internet, couldn't really find much, checked the official website, couldn't find anything there either really. For a while I thought, oh, maybe it's just a second printing. But I stumbled upon two videos, one from Mature-Minded Gamers and one from Magic Orthodoxy, both of which have the first edition, and after watching them it's quite obvious what the differences are. Well, hopefully I've caught all of them anyway. As I go and have a look, I'll also have some clips in their videos. I'll put links in the description too, so you can go check out the original if you want. Otherwise, let's just dive in. First up, we're going to see the box upgrade. So originally it just came in a little tuck box, which you'd open out to get all the cards. Whereas, as I mentioned there, it's got one of these quite nice magnetic boxes fold out to let you get everything. So that's one neat upgrade already. And obviously the next upgrade is to do with the rulebook. Originally it was just one fold out big square book, and now it's one long rule book. The main thing here being though, originally the game only had one rule set included. Now it obviously has all the extra games, so the Capture the Illusionist and the Treasure Hunter. So by making it in this long style, they've easily got all three rules in there. It does mean it's shrunk a bit though, so considering all of this used to be the whole page on the old version. A little bit of a spoiler alert, but there is actually a third printing that's going to be planned where Derek said he's going to get the text a bit bigger. Anyway, if we get back to the components, so the cards are all still the same as before. However, all these extra cards, they're new. Originally you just had the one rulebook and you'd have to pass it around the table. Now you've got the rulebook in addition, but you've got two extra cards, so you can have up to 3 reference cards going around the table, or 2 reference cards in a reference book. So they're new, plus obviously they're double-sided and they include the 2 new game modes as well that weren't originally featured. So moving off the components, having a quick look at the rules. So there's a couple of things in the rulebooks. There's a bit where it's been like cleared up in a way. So I'll keep these open and just have a little compare to the old rules as well. But there's a bit of I want to say maybe typos or confusions. Like in the picture I've seen, ending around, it said when all but one person's in. But that would mean like when one person's just gone out, and I think it should be when all but one person is out, you end the round. And then the first edition had a field zone. That was quite important. It was basically so cards played in your hand will go to your field zone. That's now been changed, so actually that becomes an exposed hand zone. Or sorry, exposed cards, but it's still part of your hand. Mechanically, it's almost the same way. The only difference being in the original rules, it looked like you could use as many. You couldn't combine your hand and the field. There were 2 separate zones. But there was no limit on the field, so I could have had like 2 wilds in the field and played them together. Whereas now it states that you can only ever play 1 card from the field at a time. But there's no field, sorry. You can only play, if you're playing from your exposed cards, you can only play them singly. You can't play them as a pair or greater, or doubles. Some of the cards are different, but before we go into that, the rest of the rules, obviously now they've included this little like important terms bit, which is extra. The cards are all named as well, so before, like say, the Illusionist just had the illusion ability. Your aces just had parry, your oracles just had chance, but it wasn't an oracle. Sorry, the ones. Now they're all named, so 1's oracle, 2's bards, 8's berserker, and so on. So they're official names, plus all the suits are now named as well. So earth, water, fire, wind and void. And another change you're also going to find is to do with they're called combos now, what you're going to play. But now, so what you're playing is single, double, triple, 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind. In the original rules, for the first edition, you basically triple, 4 of a kind, and 5 of a kind could actually beat other suits. So the triple said, oh, a triple of any kind will beat a single ace or a single wild. A 4 of a kind would beat a single or double ace or wild, and so on. Also had a bit more confusion to the confusing rulebook, because triple said it can beat a single ace or single wild, but can only be beaten by another triple. But when you got to 5 of a kind could beat a triple ace or a triple wild. So there's a bit of a can it, can't it, is it following the rules sort of thing. Plus a triple 1, say, could beat a single ace. Can a triple 1 beat a single 10? It wasn't explicitly stated it could, but it wasn't stated it couldn't. So you don't worry about it anymore. Now what it is each round, whatever combo you choose, that's the combo for the entire round. Otherwise, I think that mainly covers all the rules, apart from passing. So the one last thing that's kind of a big change as well, especially regarding how some of the character powers work, is originally, if there's already a combo on the table, you've either got to beat it or pass. But it used to be, if you pass, you're out for the round completely. But there's nowhere here that says, oh, once you pass, you're out. It just says, you either beat it or pass. And the round's only over when all 3 players pass in a row, which I think means technically if you wanted to, you could pass a round, and then if it comes back round to you again, go back in the next round. I don't know if there's a strategic way why you'd want to do that, but it is technically possible within these rules. Anyhow, so on to the last thing to look at, and that's the actual powers of the cards you're going to play, your characters. So most of them are the same or similar. They've just got a bit of text change, or a bit of it's clarified a bit more, than maybe less ambiguous than the original edition. Up until we get to number 5, who's the fighter, which is introduced. You used to have the lunge ability, which would mean the next player has to follow suit, but it's now been replaced by the pierce ability, which forces the next player to expose a card from their hand. Also, the exposed card can't be used this round. Survive could be quite a useful card if a player's holding like a single card and you're not sure what it is and don't want them to finish. 6 hasn't changed, but 7, the Deadeye Archers, now become more different, similar but different, but in a better way. So originally you could only target the next player, but now you can use the Archer's Deadeye ability on any player to make them expose a card from their hand. And then you go to Berserker, who has also quite changed and more in line with the new passing rules compared to before. Previously it forced players to drop a card, which also I never explained anywhere. I'm assuming drop a card was obvious, like they choose to put a card in the field, but there was no like glossary about what drop meant, and that was the only time I saw drop mentioned in the rules. So now it's just if you got the Berserker is the leading card and the player wants to pass, they have to expose a card of their choice. Which in theory means if the Berserker comes out early and the player has to pass multiple times, they're going to have to expose multiple cards. And then ignore the Assassin, that's the same. We get to the Ace and the Wild. So the Ace can now be used during any player's turn, whereas previously it could only be used during the turn of the player before you. But I don't think back then you could have had any abilities affect you apart from the player before you, whereas now obviously you've got the Archer can affect any player on the field. And I guess there's a bit less clarification, probably to do with the fact there's less space for the text there. But it used to say that, oh, if you've exposed it this way, it doesn't count as playing a card, although you don't do it on your turn, so I guess that might be intuitive. But also have the rule, oh, once you're out, you can't use the aces that way. But it makes sense because you're never out anymore. You just keep going until everyone passes. And the Wild. So one thing is, this explicitly states it cannot be used in combination with other non-wild cards. While looking at a couple of videos, I did see 1 or 2 cases where someone played like 2 5s in the Wild as a set of 3 5s. So now it goes with basically the Wild isn't a wild card by nature, it's just a wild card by name. That's because you place your wild card on something else and it becomes a copy, so it becomes the same number and the same ability. But the suit stays the same, so that'd be relevant for like the Oracle, for example. If you play it first, it's still a 0, but otherwise it becomes that number, so you can play that on a 1 to become a 1. However, it used to be if you played a double wild, the next wild became 0, but instead if you play a wild on a wild, I guess that also copies the 1. It doesn't reset to 0. Otherwise, yeah, so with the addition of the 2 games, which will be covered another time, it doesn't really matter, they weren't part of the first edition. But so that is everything new in the second edition of Clash of Corgis. Catch you next time.